Hello everyone, it's Infinity Break. Welcome back to my channel and thank you for tuning in for another Elder Scrolls video. Today, I wanted to be talking about something that I really was thinking about the last couple days and just realized no one had really made a video on. Who were the protagonists of all the Elder Scrolls games? And I'm talking everything from Elder Scrolls 1 to Redguard to Battlespire to Oblivion to Legends to whoever. Who were all these characters that we've never really had the opportunity to have listed out for us? Because some of us, well, including myself, haven't played things like Redguard and Battlespire and Adventures, Dawnstar and all that. There are games out there that I haven't played, and while I've played majority of them, I've always wondered who were the protagonists, and instead of looking it up and reading through all these forums and all these different Wikipedia pages, just make a video describing all of them for you, listen them all out so you can have that information for the future. So let's get into it. Now I'm going to be going in order, so the first one I want to talk about is Elder Scrolls Arena. Who was the protagonist of the first Elder Scrolls game? Well, if you watched my Study of series, it's pretty simple. The main character of the Elder Scrolls 1 Arena was the Eternal Champion, and he or she was the person who defeated Yeagar Tharn in the first Elder Scrolls game and saved all of Tamriel from his, well, evil plan to take over the Empire. The Eternal Champion in the first Elder Scrolls game has to go throughout all of Tamriel and collect 8 pieces of the Staff of Chaos. After collecting all 8 pieces and reforming the staff, they will go to the Imperial City and fight Tharn for the last time, where they'll defeat him, and in turn save the Emperor, who was thrown into a plane of oblivion and thus be named the Eternal Champion. Now the second one, who was the protagonist of Daggerfall, is known as the Agent or the Hero of Daggerfall. There is a theory that the Eternal Champion from the first game ends up becoming the Agent or the Champion of Daggerfall because they survived the end of Arena. And the games, or the amount of years between Arena and Daggerfall are roughly, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere between 4 to 10 years, somewhere around there. So it's very plausible that the character from the first game actually managed to survive and move on to the second one. So keep that in mind, though it's not confirmed. The Hero of Daggerfall, or the Agent, whichever you want to refer to him as, is canonically a male. They end up having some sort of backstory that is involved with the Emperor. Like I said, a theory is that he's the Eternal Champion. But the 6 endings of Daggerfall and the entirety of Daggerfall is centered around you helping find one of the provinces or one of the factions in Daggerfall, or the Iliac Bay, I should say. You end up helping them finding the Mentella, which will help them control the Numidium, which ends up helping out that faction's case after the events of Daggerfall. Every ending is canon though, so all the events happen at once. Everything from helping the Orcs to helping Sentinel to Wayrest and Daggerfall, helping Mannimarco, the Underking, and even the Empire. So all outcomes technically come true. One of the endings though has the main character dying and their soul is wiped from existence. So it is unsure if they end up surviving because they ended up going through with 5 realities where basically the hero ends up living, but there is one ending where they're wiped from existence, and they never seem to address the Hero of Daggerfall ever again, so it's unsure whether or not the champion or hero at this point lives. Okay, now we're going to be talking about Battlespire. Battlespire, when it came out, wasn't successful, so not a lot of people played it, and even to this day trying to play it, it's old, so I don't expect anybody to. But Battlespire is still going to be mentioned here. The protagonist of Battlespire is the Apprentice, who is a battle mage on their final day of training in the Battlespire. When they come in to do their final test, they are encountered by a bunch of Daedra who had managed to actually kill off almost everybody in the Battlespire. The Daedra are led by Mehrunes Dagon, who, as of a deal with Yeagar Tharn, had decided to invade the Battlespire and take it for himself. The ending of Battlespire has the Apprentice go through 7 different levels, so that they can basically get their friend and partner back from Mehrunes Dagon himself. The ending just shows the Apprentice leaving with the person, and then we never hear from them again. Given how unpopular Battlespire was, I'm not expecting to see any more news on them. Ah, Redguard. Your gameplay sucked, but your story was pretty damn good.
If you won't, then shamefully know that your prince will. For his blood be solid too, but strained to steel and tempered in death. Arise alike as he, as swords as we are crowns alike as he. The prince is dead! Long live the prince!
So, who's the protagonist of Redguard? Well, the protagonist is none other than a very charismatic and awesome character named Cyrus the Redguard. This guy is, well, he just doesn't want anything to do with Redguard. See, Redguard was set sometime within the Second Era, 400 years before Arena, so the main character is trying to basically fight for Redguard's rights. Because Redguard, or Hammerfell I should say, is basically being treated very badly by the Empire that's just starting to take over all of Tamriel. So, the whole game basically follows this idea of you're trying to speak up and get the opportunity to have the Empire recognize you as more of an actual nation, rather than just some group of people that will listen to you and do whatever you want. It's basically them trying to fight back so to show that they deserve more respect, rather than just being some subsidiary off to the left where they will follow the Emperor's rule without question. What happens to Cyrus after the end of Redguard is unknown. He helps and succeeds in getting Hammerfell more recognition by the Empire, but they never really say anything about what happens to him after the game's ending. So besides the little Oblivion Easter egg with the sea shanty of them singing about Cyrus, this is basically the end of the story of Cyrus. Next up is a very, very popular fan favorite of the series, Morrowind. Who is the protagonist of Morrowind? Well, for those of you who don't know and haven't played Morrowind, and those of you who do know, be calm, I will talk about him, or her, very extensively. The protagonist of Morrowind is the Nerevarine, a very, very interesting and powerful character within the Elder Scrolls lore. See, the story of Morrowind is written by a very talented young Michael Kirkbride. This man has written some very interesting Elder Scrolls lore and has a very, very amazing, intelligent, just imagination. This guy's story writing is amazing, and the story writing for the Nerevarine is also equally as interesting. So where does the story of the Nerevarine originate? Well, the story of the Nerevarine does not actually originate from the beginning of Morrowind, but rather many, many hundred years earlier actually. The story of Nerevarine starts with Great Nerevar, who was killed at the end of the Battle of Red Mountain. They don't exactly know who killed him or what killed him exactly, because they leave that very ambiguous, but most people think that either the Tribunal or Dagoth had managed to kill him. And on that day, when Azura cursed the Chinmer to become the Dunmer, she said that Nerevar would return to punish all of them and right the wrongs of the Tribunal. Since then, the Nerevarine will return again and again in failed reincarnations until finally you show up at the beginning of Morrowind, after proceeding to fulfill the prophecies one by one under different circumstances, defeats Dagoth and his Ash vampire kin, and then proceeds to destroy the Heart of Lorkhan so the Tribunal cannot get their powers back and become living gods. After destroying, or should I say removing the enchantments on the Heart of Lorkhan so that the Tribunal are no longer living gods, the Nerevarine then does the events of the Tribunal DLC, which ends up having Sothasil and Almalexia, two of the Tribunal's members, killed. This leaves Vivek until he eventually disappears under unknown circumstances, but him remaining around doesn't seem to affect the Nerevarine with his or her story going forward. After this point, the events of Blood Moon take place, though they are largely unimportant to any sort of the story. After Blood Moon, the Nerevarine then goes on an expedition to Akavir, and then is never heard from ever again. I'm not kidding, they don't mention him or her at all after that. Okay, so now moving on from Morrowind, we're moving on to Oblivion. Oblivion's main character is the Hero of Kvatch, or the Champion of Cyrodiil. They are someone who at the very beginning of the game is imprisoned under unknown circumstances and then proceeds to escape the Imperial dungeons by essentially tagging along with the Emperor, who is trying to escape the city with their bodyguards in an attempt to prevent the assassination of the Emperor. After making it through a majority of the dungeons by yourself, and then eventually aligning yourself with the Emperor who has seen you in his dreams before, You eventually make it to the end of the dungeon only to have the Cult of the Mythic Dawn assassinate the Emperor. Before he is killed, he leaves you with the Amulet of Kings and tells you to find a man named Joffrey. This person knows of the location of a secret heir, and after proceeding to find this person in Kvatch, ironically enough giving you your title the Hero of Kvatch, you basically help this new heir try to become the next emperor so that he can light the dragon fires and prevent Mehrunes Dagon from invading Tamriel. After finding the heir and getting him to the blades, you help the heir basically open a gate to Oblivion, which brings you to a place called Mankar Cameron's Paradise. After doing a bunch of other events, stopping Mankar Cameron, ending the cult and other nonsense, you basically end up helping the heir get to become emperor. He only becomes emperor though for like a couple seconds because all hell eventually breaks loose and Mehrunes Dagon himself enters Cyrodiil and the Imperial City and starts invading, trying to take everything for himself. This causes the heir to act very interestingly. He sacrifices himself and becomes an avatar of Akatosh, so that way he can defeat Mehrunes Dagon and save all of Cyrodiil. After this, you are named the champion of Cyrodiil by the Elder Council, and basically the events of the Knights of the Nine and the Shivering Isles take place. While the events of Knights of the Nine aren't necessarily important to the overall story of the Hero of Kvatch or the Champion of Cyrodiil, whichever one you want to call them, the one that is important though is Shivering Isles. Shivering Isles does give us a canonical ending to the Hero of Kvatch's story. In the Shivering Isles DLC, you are summoned to the Shivering Isles, the Plane of Oblivion in which the Daedric Prince of Madness, Sheogorath, rules over. Sheogorath needs your help to stop the Grey March, an event that is coming that will basically change all of the Shivering Isles into something very boring and orderly, which is something that he does not want. You basically find out a bunch of other stuff, and by the end of the DLC, you end up fighting Jiggalag, the Daedric Prince of Order, which I will go into in another video because I kind of don't want to ruin Shivering Isles too much. And you essentially become the new Sheogorath. After that, you can play the rest of the game normally, you can go back and do side quests and stuff, but in between the events of Oblivion and Skyrim, you basically become the new Sheogorath by over time transforming into him. What's interesting is, most Elder Scrolls fans know this, but this also means that in Skyrim when you see Sheogorath, you are seeing the protagonist of Oblivion essentially. They have just been transformed into the new Sheogorath. Now before getting into Skyrim, I should probably talk about the Elder Scrolls Travel spin-off games, cause there's very little information on the stories, but I can give you a basic idea of who the protagonist and the idea of the stories were for each game. So to rapid fire through them, the first of the Travels games was Stormhold. Stormhold was a spin-off game made for phones, I guess, in the early 2000s, in 2003 if I'm not mistaken. You basically played as a prisoner in the Stormhold prison that was basically a corrupted, very bad place to be if you were sent there. You didn't want to be there. The warden was very bad, the prisoners were going insane, people were killing one another, the guards were corrupt. The whole point was you were trying to get out, and there were many different versions of this game released. The endings, I guess, are all the same with you just escaping the dungeon, and the whole point of the game was you were just supposed to be a prisoner that was escaping this corrupted prison, I guess. The next game released was Elder Scrolls Adventures Dawnstar. Dawnstar was released in 2004, and the basic premise of the game was that you were someone who was sent for by the governor of Dawnstar to help against an impending invasion of tribes and creatures. The whole idea was that you were supposed to find 4 champions of Dawnstar, bring them back, and find which one of them was a traitor. At the end of the game, you either face the final showdown and succeed, or you fail. Your reward if you succeed is 3,000 gold, and I guess the characters... I guess your character's, story after this doesn't matter. There really isn't anything else on this character at all. It's just supposed to be a little fun spin-off game that I guess you could play. One of the last standalone spin-off titles for the Travel series was Shadowkey, which was a little bit more complex than the other two, so it'll take just a little bit more to get through it. Shadowkey follows the story of a person who lives in Azeroth's Crossing. You awake one night to find your fellow villagers basically captured by a bunch of bandits and tamed rats. After collecting everybody from a local bandit camp, you find an artifact called the Shadow Key. You also find a prisoner called Skelos Underill, who says he's under hiding from Jaegar Tharn. So this takes place during, I assume, the events of the first game, because the events of the first game took roughly about 10 years to get through, because the hero or the eternal champion had to spend 10 years going across all of Tamriel to collect all the staff pieces. And if you played Arena, it makes sense given how it takes you roughly 30 days to get from one province to the next, which is about a month. So if you spend your time resting and doing quests in one province, it can take some time. So the idea of this taking place during the events of the first game is actually pretty interesting. What happens is you're told you have to find these things called Star Teeth. Apparently these things can be used to destroy something called the Umbra Keth, or the Shadow of Conflict. Basically, the war that's going on, somebody is using the ongoing war to create this being. I don't know how they are creating it, but that's essentially what the whole game is about. You have to find these Star Teeth so you can destroy this being known as the Umbra Keth. And after you do so, you basically end a threat to the world, as it says. After this, the main character, again, not surprisingly enough, is never heard from again, but at least you feel satisfied knowing you actually saved the world at the end of the day, right guys? It's not a bad story. It's actually one of the most interesting stories I've read when it comes to the Elder Scrolls Travel series. And being released for mobile in the year 2003 to 2004 is actually pretty impressive considering phones weren't that, advanced back then, so yeah. Next up is Skyrim. Now if you guys have played any Elder Scrolls game before, you've definitely played Skyrim. Skyrim is probably the most accessible game right now with like 6 different versions out. So who's the protagonist of Skyrim? Well, the honor of that goes to the Dovahkiin, or Dragonborn, who is essentially the legendary hero, the last of his or her kind, and the one person who can stop the dragon crisis that is coming to Skyrim. The whole story of Skyrim is that the dragons are returning. They're being brought back by Alduin, who is the World Eater, who is trying to basically come back after he was pushed forward in time and nonsense. The whole objective of the game is to stop the dragons from returning, or at least stop the ones that want to destroy everything, kill Alduin the World Eater to stop the end of the world, and then be satisfied with yourself knowing that you just saved the world again, everybody. After the main story of Skyrim, there are 2 DLCs which are story-based. There is Dawnguard and Dragonborn. Dawnguard's story is majorly unimportant to the overall story of Dragonborn. You basically fight a bunch of vampires or the Dawnguard, depending on whether you side with Harkin or you side against him at first. And then Dragonborn is where the ending to the Dragonborn story happens. Dragonborn's DLC follows the idea of the last Dragonborn and the first Dragonborn coming into conflict with one another. The first Dragonborn, named Mirak, who essentially is coming back after many years of being gone, is trying to, I suppose you could say, come back to Tamriel after he had been pulled from it. The main story of Dragonborn follows 3 major things: the dragons, being able to control the dragons, and Hermaeus Mora. See, Hermaeus Mora plays a huge role in Mirak's story as well, and also manages to hold a big hand over the throat of the Dovahkiin at the end of the DLC. See, Mirak, you can't defeat him by yourself. You need to turn to Hermaeus Mora and make a deal with him so that you can basically destroy Mirak. If you don't side with Hermaeus Mora, there's no way you can do it because he's in his plane of oblivion and Mirak is way too strong on his own. By the end of the DLC, you make a deal with Hermaeus Mora so that you can go into Apocrypha, which is the plane of oblivion which Hermaeus Mora resides over, I suppose you could say. And you go and fight Mirak with the help of Hermaeus Mora, kill Mirak and destroy him, and by the end of the DLC, you are indebted to Hermaeus Mora, meaning he has full control over what you are and what you will be doing in the future. So we know the Dragonborn at the end of the Dragonborn DLC is not in a good position. He is now basically the pawn of a Daedra Lord, and that is not good. Okay, so I guess I should talk about online now. Elder Scrolls Online's story is, well, complicated. There are a bunch of conflicts going on at once, some of which being, surrounding the idea of the Daedric Prince Molag Bal trying to come into Tamriel like Mehrunes Dagon did in Oblivion. And the other one is the idea of people fighting over the throne of Cyrodiil, essentially. Because there are many, many factions that are all kind of working together and fighting against one another in an effort to try and gain an upper hand and basically rule all Tamriel. Interestingly enough though, it's not really important who your character is. They aren't an individual and therefore don't have as much details given to them or their story. You can be anybody. But at the beginning of the game, you are a sacrifice to Molag Bal, and your soul is, well, your soul is in the hands of Molag Bal. So the primary objective of the whole game is to get your soul back. Once you get the soul back, you're okay. And I guess you can just continue to be a player in an MMORPG at this point. Now to be real quick and point out something that I know someone in the comments is going to point out, I know there are DLCs for online. I have the Morrowind one, and I know it changes the intro, but I just wanted to kind of work off of the base game, because I know Elder Scrolls Online story is a little bit complicated. It's not too complicated, but it's an MMORPG, so it's a little harder to follow than a main series Elder Scrolls game. Okay, we're on the home stretch. I think there's like only 1 or 2 games left, so bear with me. We are going to be talking about Legends next. Legends is a card game that was released back in 2017 and was developed by Direwolf Digital until being eventually taken over by Sparky Pants Studios. It's not important to know who did it, but it's one of the recent Elder Scrolls games that's come out for mobile, so it's kind of cool. The story revolves around the player character known as the Forgotten Hero. Now, this was actually the character that made me want to do this video because I was researching Boethia for the Daedric Prince video, and I learned a little bit about the Forgotten Hero. The Forgotten Hero is the main character of Legends, and in Legends you're basically playing as this random character who basically plays a huge role in the Great War. The Forgotten Hero is actually the whole reason that the Empire didn't fall in the Great War and how they were actually able to hold off the Thalmor enough to come to a peace treaty. So, at the end of the day, the Forgotten Hero is the whole reason that we still have the Empire in Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. As for the outcome of the Great Hero, we don't know. The Elder Scrolls Legends is still taking its toll, I suppose you could say. It hasn't been finished yet, there are still expansions coming out for it, and I'm not sure if the story will be expanded upon or not, but all I know is that it probably doesn't matter too much what happens to the Forgotten Hero, as he's forgotten about. Okay, and the very last character that I could possibly talk about when it comes to main protagonists in the Elder Scrolls series is the main character of Blades. Now, Blades has not come out yet, so I can't talk extensively about it. It will be coming out as a mobile game, as spin-off for the Elder Scrolls series. I can only assume at this point it's going to take place sometime after the White Gold Treaty had basically gone through, and you play as an exiled member of the Blades. And the whole point of the game is that you go on dungeon crawling adventures and all these other things as you rebuild your hometown that has been destroyed. There's not really much when it comes to details as to what the main character will be doing besides that, but since it's a mobile game, it's not really going to be that expansive, I'm sure. But that's it. That's every protagonist in the Elder Scrolls franchise. God, this video took longer to record than I thought it was going to. Well guys, that's it. This video took so much longer than I thought it was going to. I think I've been recording for 3 hours now, and that's between mess-ups, editing, and just generally looking up through all the info that I could find. This video took way longer than I thought, but I suppose it'll be worth it at the end of the day. I'm surprised no one has done a video talking about all the protagonists before. I know people have mentioned all the stories, but who were the main characters? What were they? What was interesting about them? Like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed all the effort I put into this. If you like this video, then like it. If you want to see more from me like this, then subscribe. No pressure if you don't, but if you really want people to see this video and you want to see me blow up because you don't think I have enough subs or anything, share the video. Share it to a thread, a forum, a Discord, anything. I would appreciate it very much. No pressure if you don't though. You watching this video is enough. Leave a comment if you want to see anything specific on Elder Scrolls. If you have any theories, message me or, well, leave me an email. I would be happy to do any theories and give you credit on anything if you have anything to tell me. Well, that's it. This has been Infinity Break telling you all to say it with me now. Eat well, play well, and live well, friends. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I hope that you always strive to break infinity.